Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story related to the bank, which dragged on for 17 years. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Won't let me close a bank account? No problem. Not me, but my spouse's grandmother, Frankie. After my spouse's grandfather, Bill, died suddenly of a heart attack, my spouse's grandmother, Frankie, was understandably devastated, but went about closing his estate with a stiff upper lip until she got to one bank account that was only in Bill's name, not a joint account with both of them. Despite having the death certificate, will, and other documentation required, the bank absolutely would not let Frankie close Bill's account, but for whatever reason, they would allow her to withdraw money. Being the type to not suffer fools, Frankie withdrew all but 1 cent from the account. The next day, she got a call from the bank's branch manager explaining there were minimum balance requirements and the bank account would be subject to a service fee if it didn't have a certain amount of money in it at the end of each month. No problem, Frankie tells the manager, just let me close the account. We can't let you close an account in someone else's name, the manager says. At this point, Frankie realizes that it doesn't affect her if a bank account in someone else's name goes negative because of service fees. The manager won't budge, and neither will she. So the next month, the account goes negative after the bank assesses a $2 service fee. That was 17 years ago. The bank still calls her from time to time to ask her to bring the account back into the black, but when she asks about closing the account and they tell her only Bill can close it, she promptly hangs up on them and goes back to playing bridge with her friends. And our second story. Chug and spew. My wife works for a national chain of home improvement stores and brings her lunch with her to work daily, including bottled water to drink while she eats. When she gets to work, she stashes all the consumables in the refrigerator in the break room. We live down south, USA, and last July was extremely hot. I'm talking over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. For 3 days in a row, my wife's water bottles were just disappearing between the time she got to work and mealtime. Obviously, someone, other than my wife, love you, sweetheart, thought they were too good to drink from the water fountain. I can only assume it was someone working in the unair-conditioned garden center that was extremely thirsty and couldn't resist the cold water. After the second day, I recommended a revenge plan, which my wife shot down due to it possibly putting her job in jeopardy. After the third day, she agreed. I looked up a video on YouTube on how to open water bottles without breaking the seal. Anyway, the plan was to refill the water bottles with vinegar. I filled 2 water bottles with vinegar and left one alone. I put a little mark on the water bottle so she would know which one was still good to drink. She went to work and set the trap. When she came back into the break room for lunch, one of the vinegar bottles was gone from the refrigerator. On the other side of the room, there was a liquid all over the floor, like someone had walked into the break room all hot and sweaty, saw the magical chilled beverages that always appeared, and chugged and spewed vinegar. While we never did find out who was stealing the water, it hasn't happened since, and just imagine what I described above has been very satisfying for me. Aha. Nice, non-poisonous revenge. Pro for opening the water bottle while still looking sealed. And our third story. Cheat on me? You deserve what's coming. This all went down about 5 years ago. Me and my then wife were married for about 3 years at that point. She came from a very conservative Christian family. Her parents never liked me because, 1, I wasn't religious, and 2, I'm a Democrat. They tried their best to convince her not to marry me, but to no avail. Looking back, I wish they'd convinced her not to marry me. At some point during the marriage, my wife began to withdraw. She often disappeared and I didn't know where she was. It turned out she'd been cheating on me with another guy for a while. How'd I find out? Well, my wife was using my laptop, her laptop was being repaired, and accidentally clicked the Remember Me box on her email. I went to check my email and it redirected to hers. I saw every message she sent to this guy and basically confirmed that she was cheating on me. Like any sane person who realizes their marriage is over, I filed for divorce. I also alerted the other man's girlfriend and she promptly dumped him. Now, like I stated before, her parents never really liked me. When they found out I was divorcing her, they went ballistic. Apparently, she lied to them and said I cheated on her. I kept getting hateful emails from them every other week. After our divorce was final, I told her parents that she cheated on me and sent them proof. Her dad emailed me saying he was sorry and that he's disappointed in his daughter. All I replied with was, "Well, now you know what kind of person your daughter is. Never contact me again." Neither of them have contacted me since. About a year after our divorce, I get a long email from my ex with the subject as "Thanks." I thought it'd be some sort of thank you letter, but it was far from that. Some of it read like this: "Thanks for making my parents hate me. Thanks for driving me to cheat on you. Thanks for ruining my life." That was the last I ever heard of her. Her parents disowned her, and she was the shame of the small town she came from. According to Facebook, she now lives in Australia, but considering she hasn't posted anything in 3 years, I might be wrong. Also, remember the girlfriend of the guy my wife was cheating on me with? Eventually, we realized we had a lot in common and continued to talk even after the divorce was final. 8 months after my divorce, I asked her to be my girlfriend. 4 years later, and we're engaged. Couldn't be happier. I win. It's amazingly fair to steal the girl from the man who stole your wife. And our last story. Use your own license. My mother-in-law is a fantastic lady, and beyond the fact that I was lucky enough to marry her lovely daughter, I also feel pretty lucky to have married into their family. Mother-in-law is very sweet, kind, and generous. She's also extremely smart and can be hard-nosed, stubborn, and crafty, especially if she sees someone else subjected to an injustice. Mother-in-law's worked for years running the back office parts of a construction contractor, being vague here, down southern part of the good old USA. The way the business was set up, there were 2 partners. One partner held the license and provided some occasional funding, and the other partner did the actual day-to-day work of running crews to make money. This was not ideal, having to split this hard work between 2 partners whose contributions were not equal, but the working partner was, according to himself, not a school guy, and getting a contractor's license takes a lot of studying. In fact, I believe he dropped out of high school and didn't have a GED at that point. At the time of this story, the arrangement had been going on for many, many years, and over that period of time, the business had grown from 3 of them, my partners and my mother-in-law, with a few subcontractors, into having a reasonable number of employees. At the same time, the licensed partner turned from being an equal partner and wanting to grow the business to demanding an increasingly large share of the profits and providing less and less support in the tough times. This came to a head during the crash of 2008 when the licensed partner sat mother-in-law and the other owner down to tell them that he decided that he wanted to extract the money he thought he was owed for his half of the business due to the uncertain economic times, and then charge the business a fee going forward to essentially rent his license from him. His reasoning was that times were so bad there was no way the business would succeed, and he wanted to get his money before there was none left. Now anyone who's been in or owned a small business knows that money isn't just sitting around, but rather it gets reinvested or goes to pay off debts. And they both tell the licensed owner as much and say that paying out that much money, especially in 2008, will hurt the business, may even make them lay off workers during the downturn, and might ruin the business. The licensed partner knows this and doesn't care. The licensed owner tells them, "This is what's happening, and if you don't like it, you can use your own license." He had them backed into a corner here, and they agree to a solution that they'll pay him out in a reasonable amount of time, and that beyond this payout, he's no longer entitled to any of the company's assets beyond the agreed-upon fee to use this license. Well, through some belt-tightening and some good financial relationships, they were able to find or borrow the money to pay him out and still run the business without having to let anyone go. This was done primarily by the remaining owner and my mother-in-law taking some significant salary cuts with months where the owner wasn't making anything at all. In fact, over the course of the next few years, with the money saved by not having to pay a deadbeat partner out of the profits, they pay off the debts incurred due to his payout, grow the business significantly, are able to restore their previous salaries, and can give their employees some much-needed raises. While the deadbeat is no longer involved with the business operations as per the agreement, it's pretty obvious to anyone driving by at that time that the business didn't implode and was in fact thriving just by virtue of the new work trucks and the increase in people going in and out. So who do you suppose comes walking in one day a few years later looking for a handout? Supposedly silent partner is no longer happy with the terms of the deal from years before, He knows the company is doing well, and he wants his due, or the working owner can again use his own license. They tell him to pound sand. But Deadbeat isn't one to back down on his threats, as it's become one of his few remaining sources of income, so he marches himself down to the county clerk to file the paperwork to dissolve his stake in the company and, of course, remove his license. Once everything's filed, he smiles and says to the clerk, who my mother-in-law knows very well and who relayed this conversation back to her, "I wonder what license that idiot's going to use now." The clerk simply replies, "Well, I suppose he'll probably just use his own." Unknown to Deadbeat was that in addition to rebuilding and then running a thriving business made worse by the crash and paying off Deadbeat, my mother-in-law and the now only owner had spent a number of months after the original conversation studying nights and weekends to get the owner's GED and then get his contractor's license. They didn't immediately switch the business over to the owner's new license, according to my mother-in-law, because, along with not wanting to give Deadbeat a heads up, it was going to be more fun for him to learn about it this way. Bonus. To add insult to injury, the building that the business was in was also owned by Deadbeat, who'd been fairly heavily customized for the business's needs over the years. Deadbeat tried to raise the rent significantly on them after this all went down, again thinking he had them over a barrel. However, as I recall it, Deadbeat had overlooked the fact that they did not need notice to quit the lease after it expired from the current year. They'd just been signing new ones every year for so long that it didn't cross his mind. So after the new, more expensive lease was unsigned on the first day it was supposed to begin, he went down to the building to get the signature and gloat over his ever-so-slight victory, only to find the keys in an envelope taped to the door and an empty building. My mother-in-law says, "You know, we'd just done so well those previous years that we just couldn't fit in that old building anymore." Clearly, this idiot's parents never read him the fable of the goose that laid the golden egg. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.